So I'm Margie. I'm your producer. And so I'm here today to ask you a couple questions to allow the audience to get to know you a bit further. So you are Anthony McClain.
Correct.
This is Bout That Time.
It's my show.
This is your show. Well, we're flipping the tables today,
Yes.
flipping the script. So let's get into it.
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk about first why I'm here today. Why did you invite me here to sort of like have this conversation with you?
Well, realistically speaking, it was one of those things where I feel like season 1, I was speaking to the audience as though they've had a relationship with me already.
Right.
I assumed they all came to class. I assumed they all knew me through soul. And then I also just kind of failed to realize that if I'm introducing myself to the world, I kind of have to give them a framework in which gave them access to me. And I thought it would be important to give them context, let them know why this work matters to me, why I care about it, my background, my sentiments, my history, my future, my everything.
So sounds like we have a lot to cover today.
Yeah, a little bit.
Why bring this podcast into the world?
For a long time with my work at Soul Cycle, I was thinking of ways in which I could bring what I do to a larger audience. What I had to say isn't just for the affluent. What I have to say isn't just for the folks like the ride bikes that go nowhere. It was one of those things that I knew that my purpose and my calling was much bigger than just 4 walls. And I spent a lot of time figuring out ways which I could like amplify that message. And before I turned it into a podcast, it was an Instagram live show because I anticipated Instagram TV popping off sooner. And I wanted to be ready. I was like I got the vision. And then it took Instagram TV like a year to come out. So during that transition, I had created a couple more episodes, posted them on YouTube. And then the podcast just seemed like the next best fit. There are very few barriers to entry. And I knew I'd rise. I knew my content meant something. And it was one of those things where even in times when I doubted myself, my friends, my family, and like my writers would remind me like, no, like we need and love what it is that you have to say.
If someone were to listen to the podcast and then go out into the world feeling some type of way, approaching their life in a certain way, like what would that look like if you had really done your job the way you wanted to?
I created this podcast because I wanted people to do better for themselves. I created this podcast because I genuinely believe that when you love yourself, it's really hard to hate on anybody else just because you're spending way too much time feeling good. And if there was a way to which I could allow people to empower themselves or see themselves in a light that allowed them to prosper, that allowed them to progress, that saw things as opportunities and not obstacles, then I would love to leave that kind of mark on people. I think it's one of those things where we all can improve. All of us, no matter what level of self-love, self-belief, self-confidence that we have. And on a regular basis, also feel like we all need that reminder. And if I can be that, to be honest with you, that's all I want to be. It's not even if I can be that. That's literally all I want to be when I wake up. So, yeah.
And talk about, I know that so many of the folks who take your class at Soul Cycle specifically talk about the space that you create within that room. Even you, I know, get in the zone to the point where sometimes you don't remember what it was you even said, even though it's inspiring, the rest of the room. Talk about what that space represents, like in the real world, outside of Soul. How can people create that? How do you create that in your life?
In the room, it is not about exercise. It is not about burning calories. It's not about having good form. It's not about staying on tempo. It's about us practicing being our best selves. It's one of those things where I make it a point to make it very simple as to what our why should be. I feel like the world does a really, really good job of telling you your why should be so you can be skinny, so you can get that man, so you can fit in these jeans, so you can be this size and this, that, and the third. And our why is always associated with, I don't want to say something tangible, but something that doesn't actually matter. It's one of those things where like we get into the space and all we should be focusing on and all we should be practicing is getting better every day at being ourselves, at being our best selves. Our only job in life is to not play ourselves. Like, don't feed yourself a false narrative. Don't think you're getting better when you're not. Actually, truly allow yourself to progress. And I think, like, for me, that's the main goal. Like, I haven't met one person that doesn't want better for themselves. So, like, let's really lay out the groundwork, the mindset, the temperaments, the mannerisms that allow us to be who we say we are, to be who we need to be.
Say we met up for breakfast and you could tell I was like not living my best life. I was lying to myself. Like, I was accepting mediocrity. Like, how would you call me on that as a friend, as somebody who cares about me? And like, how could I begin to do that for myself? Because I think that that's what folks want to begin to do through.
Full transparency, honesty. It comes down to a lot of self-talk. I spend a lot of time thinking to myself, rationalizing, rationalizing my feelings, understanding why I feel a certain way, understanding how I can improve upon that mood, how I can improve upon my actions, how I can get closer to being the person that I say that I am. A lot of it, if not all of it, is truly a discussion. Making sure that you actually want what you say you want.
I know you've done that for me before. I know one time we were at dinner and I had told you, you know what, I feel like I've just been having certain other things going on. I feel like I am drinking a little more than I would like to. And then I went to order a second drink and you called me on it. And I think what you encourage people to do is to, have an Anthony in their own head rather than sitting across the table from them. And so that's what I'm sort of getting at. Like, how do you get to that place where you can call yourself on your self-lies?
My method of getting people to call themselves on their own stuff essentially is, instead of telling people how to live their lives, I try to illuminate to them how they're allowing themselves to live. You can tell people how to live all you want to, and that's not necessarily something that most folks are receptive to. This person doesn't know me. What is he saying? We have different circumstances, blah, blah, blah. But when you make change a question that you allow people to answer, it comes across in a completely different headspace. Like, for example, when folks bring up self-sabotage, that's one of my favorite ones to magnify, just because that's a real conversation.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where I ask people on a regular basis, are you actually getting better or are you creating a false narrative? Is it distraction that you're after or is it improvement? And I think it's those things that, when you ask the right person or the person that's truly ready to get better and progress, it comes across in a way where they're like, yeah, he got me. like, you know what? Maybe I should turn it to the right. I think there's a level of accountability that you must allow people to exercise. And if you don't allow them to exercise that, there really can't be no growth. There really can't be no progress.
I hear you, and I feel like part of it, too, is just the idea that you said it earlier, but it's easy to lie to yourself as compared to others, because it's what you do, I think, is hold up the mirror. It's rather than say, like, hey, don't order another drink. It's, I heard you say this 5 minutes ago, and I see you doing this now.
Yes.
So to me, it's more about saying and acknowledging and being that mirror to another person, than becoming that mirror for yourself.
Yes.
Than it is necessarily about, anything else.
Yes.
You and I recently talked about what it's like to, spoiler alert, turn the big 3-0.
Yes.
And to give 0 Fs about certain things.
Yes.
Talk to me about the place in your life you are right now, because I loved that. That was so resonant with me.
Turning 30 was dope. It was one of those things where I remember being 29. It wasn't that I was reticent, but similar to what I said earlier, a lot of growth is about having those big internal conversations. Like, I think just about growth and life and progress in general, we all have the same genes. Well, what I mean by that is, as you age, your genes don't change. It's not like you're a different person than what you were when you were 27 or 28. It's just the way you see yourself, the way you view the world, and the way you engage with it has changed. So in knowing that, I was just trying to mentally prepare myself to see myself bigger, to prepare myself for the life that I know I meant and destined to live. And on 30, which is May 1st, 1988, I was actually moving homes. and or changing apartments. And I remember I was totally fine with it. Like we could have like did it on May 2nd, could have did it on May 3rd, but I wanted that day to be representative of the transition that I'd be going in my life as well. And I just knew that 30 was gonna be my decade. Like I came out like just like I claimed my time. I put the word, I put the energy, I put the momentum into the universe, and I'm ready to get mine. And it's liberating. I think there's something that's like mental liberation is real, and maybe that's not an actual term, but maybe I'm gonna coin it. When you like set yourself free, there's like it's hard to explain if you haven't done it, but there's like a weightlessness, like the negativity kind of, I don't want to say it fades, but it's no longer existent. You start to look back on your 20s to think about the dumb stuff you used to worry about and all the whatnots and the what ifs and all those things didn't happen. And then I hit 30 and I don't even think about whatnots and what ifs. I'm just like, what am I going to do? What move am I going to make? Who do I need to collaborate with? What's my future going to look like? I need to diversify my portfolio. You start to view everything as an opportunity just because in your 20s you listen to obstacles and them obstacles never really guided your path in the right direction. They just made you nervous. And for me, turning 30 was just like game time. For me, turning 30 was like let's go. Let's go.
Talk about sort of the power of getting rid of self-doubt, because it's hugely important to work hard.
Facts.
But again, another thing I totally appreciate about you is you've never tried to mess around with where you're going. You've never ceased to believe in it.
Mm-hmm.
So talk about sort of seeing your future, believing it, investing in yourself, sort of this idea of not having doubt in your upward trajectory.
Something that's been really helpful in reference to doubt is the stories and the tribulations of other great people. I'm a big fan of sports. And for example, Tom Brady, I think, was drafted in like the 7th or like the 6th round, and now he's the GOAT. It's like this mixture of sometimes you look for our validation through everyone else's ability to recognize talent, to see in you what you know you have in yourself. And I no longer allow myself to fall victim to such things. Just because folks don't see you does not mean that you're not the biggest thing in the room. And that idea and that mission of always just chipping away at like focusing on the things that you can control, and your doubt is something that you can control. And with that being said, it's not like there's certain days that go by where it's not a bit more difficult than others, or there's not a, am I different? Am I special? Am I chosen? Like that happens. But as you age, and at least for me, in the way that I feel about myself, it happens a lot less and less often. It's one of those things like when the hardships come, I know it's a part of the process. I think in the past when hardships came, it allowed doubt to grow. But now I just remind myself that that's just life. There's just ebbs and flows. Like sometimes Mercury hits retrograde. It doesn't mean that like you're any less talented or you're any less capable. So reminding myself that doubt, it's something that we create. There's times where actually, I'm happy you asked me that question, because I actually worked through it. In certain situations, my doubt is heightened, and my network and my friend group has put me in rooms with people that are much more my senior. They've lived their careers like VPs, like they're like established.
Yeah, you got some intimidating humans around you, for sure.
Facts. And I walk into these spaces, and as like a budding entrepreneur, finally like stepping in even more so into my truth and into my entrepreneurship, I'll tell them what I'm doing, but I'll say it with trepidation. And in these rooms, I think to myself, or afterwards, after reflecting, they didn't ask me to be nervous. They were just curious as to like what it is I do in my life. Like they didn't like see me and go, oh, I hope he starts to sweat. I hope he starts to shake. I hope he doesn't believe in himself. No one else tells you to doubt yourself. You allow yourself to feel that.
Ooh, I love that.
It's just a fact. And it's one of those things where the less I allow myself to do that, the more present I allow myself to be and operate in these spaces as the human being that I know that I am and the human being that I know I have the potential to be.
Like that. It reminds me, I told you, sometimes you spit out these amazing quote-worthy like Anthonyisms and then you forget them. And my favorite, I think, perhaps in the top 3 at least, was "You're already strong, be special." Because it's, I think sometimes
I forgot about that one too.
I repeated it to you like 8 or 9 times, and you were chanting it, and man, was everybody around you getting hyped up? Because it's, I think sometimes we think being strong is enough, but like the idea that like you can go beyond that and sort of that self-push, I think, is important. Let's talk about we've talked about so much about who you are now. Talk about your journey and like some of the milestones that sort of brought you where you are now.
Man. I feel like it must start with my mom. I mean, yeah. What, and I say we, because we did it together, what we were able to, I don't even want to say achieve, the relationship that we had, that we have. I still love you, Mom. She's a major, she is the reason why I am the person that I am today.
Where'd you grow up? How'd you grow up? Walk us through it.
We grew up in New Jersey. I was born in Irvington, New Jersey, and then we moved to Union, let's say, when I was 4 or 5. No, actually, 5 or 6. And single mom. She worked really, really hard. I remember she had me when she was 16. She went to school at night and worked during the daytime, and she used to work nights. And until I told her that I missed her, so then she stopped working nights and got a different job. But I mean, there's a story that I'm gonna touch base on when she comes on the show for us to talk. But there's one story about how when I was younger, I'd say I was 6 years old. Actually, I might have been 5 years old, and I told her that I wanted to walk to school by myself. I felt like grown enough to walk to school by myself. And she said yes, when she rightfully, easily could have said no. And when I talk to her about it now, well, let me give you the whole story. And I would walk to school, and she would act like she was asleep in bed or laying back down. But as soon as I left, she would like put her coat on and like follow me outside and kind of like stalk me. And she did it for like a good 4 months. And she said that when I walked to school, every time that I would reach like a certain point, I would look back. And she thought I knew she was following me. What I was doing was just like being mindful as to like, when I get to this point, I can't see this tree anymore. When I get to this point, I can't see this house anymore. And like 4 months in, she decided to stop following me because she realized that I was paying a lot of attention. And like after 4 months, no creepy suspects on the trail, whatever. And I didn't know this. She like just recently told me about this.
You're kidding.
And, no, like she just recently told me about this. And I remember that she had said to me, it was really important to me to make sure you always believed in yourself. I had saw your willingness as a 5-year-old to take it upon yourself that you to I wanted you to stay empowered. I wanted you to still have this feeling that you could do anything. And that's from personal experience, because she knew that she didn't always have that feeling. And she knew what it would be like to navigate a world not believing in yourself. And it was one of those things where so I'm 5, she's 21. Like, I mean, like she's a special human. I think about the way I see things and I say it to people. People are always like how do you have that mindset? How do you have that perspective? And it's because not that I've had fewer hurdles. I mean, a single mom that's not easy, but just the way she's allowed me to see myself has changed my entire life. And if I can help others see themselves differently in a way that could change their life, like that's it. That's the why. That's the what we do it for. That's why I am the way that I am.
What's incredible about that story? Well, many things, but I also think probably anyone listening was imagining along with you as you told the narrative, because it's a really beautiful image of a mother following her child. And then you say she's 21 and the whole thing blows up in my mind because
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I think about when I was 21.
Yeah. And then I'm like hell no.
I could, like, taking care of myself to
Yeah.
raise a young man in that
Yeah.
at that caliber is incredible, I think. And
She's exceptional. Like she's literally a superhero, and I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge that. Because it's one of those things where when I tell people stories of my mom, folks with two parents are like, "You're lucky." Like folks who grew up with both mom
Hell
and dad in the
yeah.
household are like, "You are lucky," and it's just. I remember there was a point in time where another important story. I was when I moved from New York to Chicago. My mom had sent me this really beautiful text that I had read to my Scarsdale moms. Scarsdale's a suburb outside New York City. And it was right before class. I remember they all cried. My mom had said something along the lines of like, I am so proud of you and the young man you've become and the grown man that you're about to be. And she said that I would give up my childhood all over again just for us to be right back here or something like that. I just remember like it was the sweetest, like it was I remember saying that I probably got choked up. And all the moms legit just bawled like on sight. It was just like a flood. It was just I mean she's special. And speaking her truth and telling her story out loud, like almost gives me like even added perspective. I don't take her for granted, but like at all. But like really just like repeating it out loud. The number of circumstances where she was different, where she was brave, where she was whew. I am the way I am because of her. Yes.
wow. It also, the words you told me have new meaning now, because I feel like that you're already strong, be special is the exact narrative you just told. You said she was special, and I hear that. She was more than strong, and
Yeah.
I can see where you model your life in that way.
Yeah. Man.
Can't wait to have her on the show.
It's going to be amazing. It's going to be tearful. It's going to be an experience. It's going to be funny, too.
Well, that's why I think you're an exceptional friend to hang out with, because we do. We go through, we have fun, we laugh, we sing Kanye, but we certainly have intense moments. And I think that's what you're ultimately trying to bring to an audience.
Yes.
Be better, have fun along the way, push yourself.
Yeah.
All right, so we leave you at 6 years old in this story. Talk about the next like sort of step in your journey, and how do you end up in fitness?
Whew. That part's actually fucking hilarious. Fitness started, ironically enough, when I was like 12 or 13 years old. One of my homeboys had said to me that actually my best homeboy had said to me that if my legs were on a chick, they'd be hot. Yeah. And then 2 or 3 days after that, my girlfriend at the time, who didn't know he said that, said to me she wished she had my legs. I mean, bro, bro, nah. Like I can't be walking around 12 years old with hot girl legs.
Oh
Like
no.
that just couldn't like what I look like. Like what? I was hot. Musa. I was upset. I didn't think I was mad. I think I was just like real depressed. I was just like that's how you all, yeah, that's how y'all really feel. So then I became obsessed with playing football. Obsessed with playing football. Used to play backyard games all the time. Hit the gym heavy. I remember I was playing Madden, and I would look at the stats of all the wide receivers, like how tall they were, how much they weighed. I would like look up their like actual like combine tapes and be like, so they broad jumped this high. They had like I was serious. I would come home. I became absolutely obsessed with learning how to physically make myself better. I was not going to be the hot chick anymore. That wasn't going to be how like that wasn't going to be the legacy. And I remember at some point in time, I had just kind of fallen in love with the process. I like that I could see myself get better every week, if not every day. And I also realized that my body responded really, really well to it, especially like in comparison to my peers. It was like like I stumbled upon something that I was really good at and also really passionate about. And I actually probably liked training more than I liked playing. Also ended up training more than I played anyway, but that's beyond the point. But that was where the fitness thing started. It empowered me. There's times in which I took a gap year between undergrad and grad school, and that gap year wasn't intentional. I had gotten into Arcadia, and I was waitlisted at the University of Miami. It's actually a perfect segue into why I do all my mentorship stuff now. And I couldn't afford 2 admissions fees. Arcadia wanted me to spend $500 to hold my spot, and I was assuming Miami was going to be $500 too. But if I would have paid for Arcadia, I would have been able to go to Miami if they had accepted me. And I remember I had waited for myself to get off the wait list at Miami. Arcadia kept telling me that the class was filling up, so Arcadia closed. I never got off the wait list at Miami, and I was forced to take a year off. And it was a miserable year. I had this undergraduate degree that I couldn't do anything with. Like it wasn't like a stepping stone. It wasn't like a pre-nursing. It literally, all I had was debt. My boys had good like degrees. I had a rehab science degree. My boys had like jobs, Audis, like balling. I was sad. Like I mean, like real talk, it was dark. And fitness was the one thing that kind of allowed me to escape again. It allowed me to reconnect. It allowed me to make sure that no matter how the new applications were going, no matter how work was going, no matter how anything else was going, I controlled this. I got better at this every day. I'm really, really good at this. And it kind of was my whole self-esteem. A part of me was also slightly hopeful that building my body in this way was going to be conducive down the line. It was going to be a smart choice. It was going to be something that I could later use. And then I remember I got into Columbia after being like denied from everywhere else. And my girl at the time, and granted, this part isn't just fitness, but I'll finish the story. We pulled over like onto the shoulder, and I remember like we both just cried. It was like one of the highest of high moments of like it just felt like I got a second chance, not just a second chance, like a Ivy League second chance. And whew, I mean, I needed that. I needed that. And it brought me to New York. And then in New York, I found Soul Cycle. I left school. It was interesting. Physical therapy ended up not necessarily being what I anticipated it being. The hours were rough. The pay was meh. And I remember the one thing that like tipped me off was when one of the physical therapists at this really nice hospital I was at, he had said being a physical therapist, he goes, we're pretty much glorified dog walkers. We get the patients up and we get the patients up out of bed. We get them to ambulate 50 feet and go up and down 2 stairs so we can discharge them. And I was just like, that can't be my why. Like that's just not what I'm supposed to be doing. And at the same time I was doing that, I was working late night at Soul, and I couldn't wait to get to Soul. And I was like, why am I torturing myself with this job that I clearly don't want? Like it became an obvious choice for a number of reasons. We separated unceremoniously, and Soul became my only opportunity. And it was like, all right, so it's like this or nothing. So I literally put all of my energy into becoming the best fitness professional that I could be. And let me hear.
Here being Chicago, talk about moving from New York to Chicago.
That transition was interesting. Not from a work standpoint necessarily, but I'd say before moving to Chicago, I remember Rachel and I were talking about, like, we had just stumbled across an ad that talked about how segregated Chicago is, how it's still like maybe the most segregated metropolis in the country. And I was like, it's Chicago. I'm like, the third largest city can't be segregated. I was like, nah, like, that ain't real. And it was real as hell. It was actually kind of jarring. And it was like this interesting mix of like being in New York City where it's super liberal, super progressive, like hella understanding. I was in a place that wasn't that. I was in a place that looked at me differently, that said shit to me, that said things to me that nobody in New York would ever say to me. And it took me a minute to find my footing. You could tell that I was the majority of people's only Black experience. That wasn't a thing in New York. Like, I didn't have to, like, there were multiple times where African conversations, there's a very large disconnect when you're teaching 30-year-olds how to communicate with Black people. And granted, that's not everybody. Don't get me wrong. But there are certain circumstances where that was just brought to my attention, and that wasn't something that I thought I'd have to be doing. So there was this mixture of understanding that, like, I was in a different place. I needed to find some people whom of which I connected with, whom of which I didn't have to prove myself to, whom of which I didn't have to rewrite a narrative and saw me as a human. But then that happened, and it was dope. And, like, I found my restaurants. I found my squad. I found my happy.
That sounds like a huge, insane responsibility to represent an entire population to certain people.
No.
Do you still feel that way?
Well, the thing that's interesting is, given my work and given the social justice climate, it's hard to have things like Jason Van Dyke happen and me not feel some kind of way. Like, I vividly remember, I think it was like the Alton Sterling, and then how can I remember his name? Minneapolis. See, because there's too many of them. Had happened like back to back. I remember like I woke up that morning and had to teach, and I was grieving over Alton. And then somebody had told me that someone else had passed too, and I was like, "What do you like? What?" I just remember I was distraught, apoplectic, like woo! I was I was so furious, and I expressed it. there's ways in which, and it's important too from the standpoint of sometimes being folks' only Black experience. Like, I didn't want to just show up and act like I was unfazed. I didn't want folks to think it's just like, oh, well, if he's not impacted by it, maybe it's not that bad. Like, no, it's actually affecting all of us. It's actually one of those things where that could be me. So, like, as comfortable and, like, as good as I might make you feel, know that I could also just suddenly be shot for no reason. And, like, that's real life. And, like, not to make you feel bad about it, because that's not the goal. Like, everybody that doesn't look like me isn't bad. That's not the goal. But it's just knowing that, like, that's a real reality. And I think it's important to, I don't want to say, like, to bridge that gap, but to kind of be that example, to help folks, like understand that this is real, this does hit home, and this is something that it's trying. It should be a conversation.
So let's pick back up. You were talking a bit about officer-involved shootings.
Yeah.
And about how you profoundly feel that, and how you've had a lot of conversations about that. And what I would ask is, what's your advice to people who want to have really, really flippin' hard conversations? Because I know that you're regularly doing that with the close humans in your life.
Yeah. Being okay with being wrong, I think is really the first step. It's probably like the only part that matters per se, from a standpoint of there's people who go into these conversations not being open to learn. And what I mean by that is they engage in them with the wrong, what's the word I'm looking for? Nouns. like for example, I plan on having a conversation with two friends of mine that were previously in heterosexual relationships, and now they're in queer relationships, and the one is dating a transgender male, but she's non-binary, and the other is dating a homosexual male. Now, it's one of those things where I could have easily messed that first part up, but that's totally fine. And I'm okay with having these kind of conversations just because I think they matter. In fact, I know they matter. That level of understanding, that perspective in that story that's not being told, like all those things matter in order for us to bridge the gap and to find some kind of like common ground. Being okay, being wrong is the point. That's kind of what growth and learning is, period. So when it comes to having those conversations, I mean, be prepared to listen. Be prepared to be corrected. Be prepared to not know the answers. Be prepared to not completely understand the experience, but know that it's valid. You know what? Actually, to speak on that part, because that part kind of gets me a little tight, is no one makes up their despair. Like if somebody tells you that they're going through something, they're going through something. Like I don't know anybody whom of which the heroin epidemic has has affected, but I'm not going to belittle it. I'm not going to be like, oh, it's not touching me, therefore, I don't care. That's not real. Like you're just not a nice person. There's just a way in which you go about it. I think empathy is huge. Empathy is massive. And if you lack that, then it's going to be impossible to have such conversations. It just means that you actually don't want those things to get better, for being honest about it. So really, before going into those conversations, make sure you're prepared to be educated, prepared to not be offended, prepared to listen. Yeah, that's about it.
I think sometimes, too, people are not necessarily afraid to be offended, but afraid to offend, right? Like, we're so delicate and polite with each other sometimes, and I think it's that fear of a challenging conversation, uncomfortable conversations. I think there's a fear.
And you know what else I will say, too, flip side? Playing devil's advocate. Damn it, with the Ant. Playing devil's advocate. When you're the educator, when you're the one that's oppressed, really practicing the patience. And that's something that we as Black people say often. I'm so tired of being woke. And that's a real thing. It's exhausting having to explain your Blackness to people all the time. But if you really want it to get better and if you really want to be a part of the solution, And if you really want to be a part of the solution, you got to be patient with it. But there's also this balance of, if I've been patient for a year and a half, 2 years, and you still don't get it, I got to be smart with it and realize that I just can't take you with me. And there is a line there. There is some nuance. But it's actually patience on both ends. If we're being, let me not just point the finger. It's patience on both ends.
Yeah, because I think I can think of several of your friends, myself included, where we've carved out a space that is really unique to have conversations.
Yeah. And I mean, because those things matter. And being skilled at having such conversations is actually just being a part of the solution. And it also helps from, like, I'm a huge believer that there are no hard conversations. That's just something that we tell ourselves to kind of make ourselves feel better about them. Like, oh, well, if this person says it's a hard combo, then we don't got to talk about it. Like, we as a society, that whole idea of, like, we can't talk about politics and we can't talk about religion, it allows us to not talk about many other things too. Because then what happens is we'll talk about, like, a woman's control over her body. Oh no, that's politics. Or oh no, that's religion. Actually, no, it's a woman's control over her body. So instead of, like, putting things in silos and just throwing everything in the silo, let's take everything out the silo and have healthy conversations. Have like the one thing that I'm big on. I'm actually happy that you brought it up. And now that we're, like, flowing and I'm grooving again, is people would rather avoid a hard conversation than, like, dismantle injustice. Does that make sense? Like, people would rather, I'd rather not talk about it and let women live in fear of sexual assault with impunity than have a hard conversation. Like, that's not okay to me. And that shouldn't be okay to anybody. Like, a woman's safety is not a political thing. You can't tell me that. Like, when I have a daughter, I'm not gonna be like, oh well, it's political, boo boo, get over it. Like, no, I can't come home and say that when she cries to me and I sound like that. That's just not the way that works. So that just doesn't that doesn't fly. That's a poor excuse. That's like folks who use the word plateau or folks who use the word coincidence or no. You've found the words to justify your complacency, and I'm not here to be complacent. That's not our purpose. God didn't put us here to be that. Like, no, I'm good on that. So no, there are no hard conversations. We just gotta do some hard work, period.
Talk about a hard conversation you had recently.
Oh man. I recently had to let my boy go. It was right after the Kavanaugh and the Van Dyke stuff. That was a rough week. And I remember that weekend I was like, ugh, like the Van Dyke and, like, on the same weekend, if we take 2 L's, I just don't know if the world, like, I just wasn't ready. I just knew it was going to be real. And leading up to that, my white homeboy, we had talked and he was like, how you feeling? I was like, I'm actually not feeling that good. Like, my energy's a little off. I'm kind of, like, cocooned and bracing for the worst, kind of, or impacting, bracing myself for the worst. And he just said something that was really insensitive. It was like, oh, well, like, you should only focus on the things you can control and let, like, everything else, like, fall by, like, just, I mean, no one else lives life that way, bro. Like, that's just, like, first of all, let's zoom all the way out. You don't understand white male privilege, fine. You understand friendship. You understand I'm telling you I'm hurting and I'm in pain. You're not gonna belittle my pain. You're not gonna sit here and not be there to pick, like, that's just. But I knew that I couldn't allow that person to play that role in my life anymore. I still wish them the best. I still love them. I still want them to progress and prosper and be happy and all that. But you can't play that role of best friend no more. And, like, that's just real. You that's not what I need. And it's also this mixture up too for anybody that's listening is if you tolerate your friend more than you love your friend, or if your friend is more if 3 times, like, I got real boundaries. If you're the hardest part of my week 3 weeks out of the year, 3 weeks out of the season, I'm good. Like, your friend should not be the hardest part of your week, of your season. Like, that's just not the way that works. If they, like, that's clearly not the kind of energy that I need around me in order for me to move forward. So I think things like that are they're very, very important, and just something to think about. But I would say my most recent hard conversation was having to not part ways, but create space with my best friend.
Man, you said there are no hard conversations, but that was probably about as close as it can get to a hard conversation.
I just think transparency is real. I'm not afraid to have said combos. There's actually times where recently I was at a restaurant, and the woman I was next to, she also randomly wrote at Soul Cycle, and she said that she loves when she goes to Soul and the instructor celebrates her for just showing up. And if you know me,
Whoo!
And so when I told the story in class, everyone went, "Oh!" like everyone knew that that's just not how I get down. Like, we're put on this earth to do much more than just show up, because showing up isn't doing your best. People show up to jobs that they hate. Like, people show up and punch the clock all the time. That's not progress. And I had that combo. Like, on site, I was just like, okay, this is gonna be a little difficult, and I was obviously really tactful about it and polite. But yeah, like, there are no hard conversations. If you really want to be a part of the solution, if you really want what you say you want, prepare yourself and act on it. That's all. That's all I'm doing, is living my truth. Is being who I say I am.
What does a day in your life look like? I think you talk a lot about being your best self. Like, what do you wake up and do? What think, eat?
Solid question. I mean, oatmeal, banana, almond butter. What else? Eggs somewhere. At least 2 cups of coffee. But the majority of it, and like I said earlier, it's a lot of it's about rumination. It's about reflecting and processing feelings, having a majority of unfinished conversations. Just making sure I'm growing. Preparing myself in all ways for the life that I'm intended to live. From a standpoint of, like, there's certain things that I'll tell myself on my road to progress, right? Right now is the least busy I'll ever be. Like, if everything else, and when everything else falls in place the way it's supposed to, this would be like the most chill my life will ever be. And being okay with that. Like, having the conversations of, it's not about hiding or trying to cover up how difficult your best life is. It's about coming to terms with it, or coming to terms with it and choosing it anyway. I think that's the thing that's just huge. It's I'm not trying to talk myself out of things. I'm preparing myself and realizing, okay, so from a just from a calendar standpoint, what does that look like? From a sleep standpoint, what does that look like? From a food standpoint, workout standpoint, work-life balance standpoint, energy standpoint, like. And maybe it's because I'm living my truth that I'm aware that my whole life goes into everything that I'm doing. But just really being mindful that I'm covering all the bases. I don't want anything that I can control to be holding me back. When it's my time to win, when it's my time to shine, I'm ready. I am ready. I can't control the weather. I can't control if you don't see my talent, but everything else, ready. So that's kind of what the day legit is. And like, of course, emails and like collaboration and next move stuff, but it's really preparation.
I'm sure everyone really wants to know how many times a day you work out.
Well, on a good day, 3, bad day, minimum 2, with 1 day off.
Okay.
Yeah. On a good day, 3.
And now the people know.
Bad day, 2.
Give the people what they want, as I've said in our past interviews. Because I want people to sort of get the sense of who you are fully as a person, I would also love to talk about your passion, specifically around fashion.
Yes. It's actually funny. I remember, so Rachel's my girlfriend, and I met her in New York when I was still in grad school. I met her through personal training. You know how that go. Dudes, do not let your girl personal train with no other dudes. It's just not safe. I just don't recommend it. Don't recommend it. But well, I was broke when she met me. I was broke. I remember I had this Under Armour shirt that I cut the sleeve off, and she ain't noticed. I cut that sleeve off right down the seam, but it looked fresh. So I had like the one long sleeve and the one no sleeve. And for the longest time, she thought that like it came like that. But nah, I cut it. I was just like I was broke, but I knew I was fly. And I told her when I get money, she gonna see. And yes, that's I say true to my word. But fashion is something that's big to me. It's something that like it's another way to talk without talking. It lets you know that I'm detail oriented. It lets you know that I like details. But it lets you know that I'm detail oriented. It lets you know that how I'm feeling that day. It's a layer of communication. It's confidence, swag. Sometimes it's chill. Sometimes it's fresh. But it's another way in which I get to communicate without using words, and I'm really passionate about it.
What are some of your favorite items in your wardrobe, or some of your favorite trends right now? Quickly.
Shoot. Well, I mean,
I was gonna say, tell me about these. Tell me about these shoes you have on right now.
I mean, the furry Gucci loafers are definitely the wave. The fanny pack's definitely a wave, or the belt pack or the belt bag. I love a nice coat, a statement coat. Like it's like when your coat is fresh and you wear like a really simple tee underneath, and there's some like black jeans. I'm really big on statement pieces and like statement colors. I got this like red pair of Timbs that I love. There's a number of things. It all depends. I might dabble in the hats. I've had this idea, and I'm going to share it with Virgil whenever I first meet him, because I actually wanted to be in like Louis print. Somebody going to take it, but it's okay. Know that it came from me. You know how people put roses on their lapels? I want the rose to be Louis V like scarf fabric, and to pin it to a lapel. Because I'm thinking about like, I like pocket squares and folks have done that. But it's one of those things where I've never seen anybody.
Yeah, it's like a take on a corsage.
Yeah,
hot take on the.
See?
Yeah,
it's fresh. Ain't nobody done it yet. Virgil,
you heard it here first.
Virgil, I'm saying I want one in red. I want one in all the colors. But it's coming, and when we meet, I hope you're ready. And if not, I'm gonna shoot you like the email before we meet, just give you the heads up about the vision. But yeah, man, I'm ready. That's fresh. That's fresh. Stuff like that. Details.
Hell yeah. Who inspires you?
In reference to inspiration, I always come down to 3 people. It's always my mom, Melody Hobson, and Robbie Robinson. My mom made me the way that I am. Melody Hobson has showed me what it takes to be my best self. She didn't teach me how to dream. She showed me how to achieve. There's no such thing as too much work. That's all just an excuse. The grind doesn't stop. thoughtfulness still really matters. Intelligence is I don't have enough words for Melody. She's changed my life. She's changed the way I see myself. Yeah. She's singular. She's simply remarkable. And Robbie Robinson, he's always right. And like I never say this to him, but from like a guidance standpoint, he's that big brother that like I never had, but I really look up to. Phenomenal father, quality human being, and super supportive from like a mentor standpoint. He showed me how to mentor because I would dream and he wouldn't discredit. He wouldn't doubt. He would only support. And then more importantly, connect me to people whom of which will live in my dream. Like he's a major facilitator, a major cheerleader. He think he funny. He kind of funny, like a quality human. So maybe those three.
Okay, so I want to begin to wrap up by talking about what people can expect in season 2 of the podcast.
Great question. So season 2 essentially, it coalesces around the theme of self-actualization. Before this, or before self-actualization, the idea was pillars of empowerment. But I've grown to realize that there's a lot of empowered people that still don't love themselves, that aren't living their truth, they're pretty miserable, and empowerment just wasn't aiming high enough. Self-actualization, ideally, is a human being living up to their fullest potential. I think that matters, and I think that's really what we're all looking for. Sometimes folks talk about money and success and this, that, and the third, but there's folks with money and all that, and they're really, really sad. So before you get there, just let me tell you that that's not going to like satisfy you. That's not going to satiate you. But I think really getting people on the road and on a journey to living their best life, to living their truth, is invaluable. There's an adage that and I believe it and totally makes sense to me, but human beings don't necessarily know, or human beings can't fathom the depths of love until they've had a child. And I think that human beings can't fathom the depths of happiness until they live their truth. And it's one of those things where before having a child, you know what love is. Like, you get that concept, but you can see how having a kid just completely changes that whole feeling and emotion. And on my journey towards me living my truth and things just going in the right direction and opportunities opening up, this, that, and the third, there's a level of like excitement and energy and like enthusiasm that I have to wake up every day and do what I get to do that I just didn't quite feel before. And if we can all be on a similar path, I think that'd be amazing. So if I can help people get more in tune and get more aligned with that voice inside themselves that they try to quell because they just don't think they're that special, or they don't think they're fortunate, or at times their current circumstances are just so rough that they can't see themselves being successful. I want to help that. I want to be a part of that solution. I don't think anybody's here to be regular. I genuinely don't. I don't want everybody to allow themselves to be special. Like we say in class, you're already strong. Allow yourself to be special. There's levels to it. There's acknowledging that you're special, allowing yourself to be special, and then knowing how to shine.
That's some profound stuff you got there.
But it's true though. Like we all, I genuinely believe, I don't think there's anybody that's walking around that doesn't have a small voice inside of them that's telling them what they're supposed to be doing. That like you wake up and nobody instilled this dream in you. No one told you that you're supposed to feel this way. There's just this quiet voice inside of you that says more. Everyone has that. I have met anybody that's like, nope. I have met my one friend who chooses to be a bystander in her own life. Now that was a big conversation we had. That's very, very different. Don't be a bystander in your own life, kids and adults.
On that note, I think people are going to be fired up for season 2.
Yeah.
Dropping soon.
Mm-hmm.
And this was fun just to talk Anthony for a bit, for a
True.
change.
It was different. It was different. I appreciate you, Margie. As always. As always.
I appreciate you too, sir.